The secret journey of a painting from the artist's studio to a museum. Imagine an artist standing in a studio hundreds of years ago. The painting is finally finished. The artist steps back. Perhaps the work is sold immediately. Perhaps it is given as a gift. Perhaps it remains in the artist's home for years. At that moment, nobody knows where the painting will eventually end up. It might pass through the hands of kings, wealthy families, dealers, collectors, auction houses, and museums. It might cross oceans. It might disappear during a war. It might be stolen. It might be rediscovered decades later. And eventually, if everything goes well, it may arrive behind glass on a museum wall. But how does a painting make that extraordinary journey? The answer is called provenance. Provenance is the documented history of an artwork's ownership. It is the trail that connects the painting's past to its present. Who owned it first? Who bought it? Who inherited it? Where was it displayed? When was it sold? And how did it finally become part of a museum collection? For a museum, these questions are not simply interesting details. They can determine whether the museum should acquire the artwork at all. Imagine that a museum discovers a beautiful painting that appears to be an important historical work. The quality is extraordinary. Experts believe it may be authentic. The price is attractive. It seems like a perfect opportunity. But then someone asks a simple question. Where has this painting been? That question can begin an investigation that lasts for years. Researchers may search old auction catalogs, estate records, exhibition histories, letters, photographs, museum archive, family documents, dealer records. They may compare descriptions from decades or centuries ago with the painting itself. Sometimes the trail is clear. Sometimes there are gaps, and sometimes those gaps matter enormously. One of the most difficult parts of provenance research involves artworks that disappeared during war. During the Second World War, enormous numbers of artworks were looted, confiscated, or forcibly sold by the Nazis and their collaborators. Jewish families and other victims were often deprived of their collections. Some paintings disappeared into private collections. Others entered the international art market. After the war, many works were recovered, but not all of them. Decades later, museums and collectors continue to investigate whether artworks in their collections have connections to these losses. A painting hanging peacefully in a museum today may have a complicated history that stretches back to a family who lost everything during wartime. That creates an ethical question. Even if the museum acquired the painting legally many years ago, should it return it? And if it should, who has the right to receive it? These questions are rarely simple. There may be several families making claims. Records may be incomplete. Ownership may have changed many times. Some cases are resolved through restitution, others through settlements. Some remain disputed for years. But the principle is important. A museum's responsibility does not always end when the artwork enters its collection. Sometimes the museum must continue investigating the past. And wartime looting is not the only difficult issue. Museums around the world are also reconsidering artworks acquired during colonial periods. Objects and paintings may have been removed from communities under unequal political conditions. They may have been purchased, taken, exchanged, or transferred under circumstances that will be questioned today. This has led museums to reconsider how collections were built. The journey of an artwork is therefore not always a celebration. Sometimes it is also a record of power, money, conflict, loss, and inequality. Then there is another fascinating part of the journey. The art market. A painting may move from the artist's studio to a private collector, then to a dealer, then to an auction house, then to another collector. Every transaction can add another chapter to its history. Auction houses create catalogs. Dealers keep records. Collectors may write notes. Families may preserve letters and photographs. These documents can become extremely valuable to future researchers. But the trail is not always complete. A painting may disappear from the records for 50 years, then suddenly reappear. When that happens, researchers have to ask what happened during those missing decades. Where was the painting? Who owned it? Why was it hidden? Was it legally acquired? Was it stolen? Was it moved during a war? Or was it simply sitting quietly in someone's home? Sometimes the discovery of an old painting can become international news. A work may be found in a private home after decades of being overlooked. Experts examine it. Scientific tests are performed. Its provenance is reconstructed, and suddenly, a painting that had almost disappeared from history becomes an important cultural object again. But even after a museum decides to acquire a painting, the journey is not finished. The artwork must go through a formal process called accessioning. Accessioning means officially accepting the artwork into the museum's collection and recording it in the institution's permanent records. The museum assigns an accession number. It records the artist, title, date, materials, dimensions, provenance, acquisition method, and other information. Condition reports may be prepared. Photographs are taken. The artwork is entered into the museum's collection database. Only then does it truly become part of the institution's permanent collection. And there's something beautiful about this process. A painting that began as one person's creative idea can eventually become part of the public record. It is no longer simply something owned by an individual. It becomes something a museum has accepted responsibility for preserving. But that responsibility can last for generations. Museum professionals must protect the artwork from humidity, temperature changes, excessive light, pests, physical damage, and deterioration. They must document every conservation treatment. They must track where the artwork is stored or displayed. They must continue researching its history. The painting may be hundreds of years old, but its museum life is still continuing. And sometimes, its journey continues beyond the museum. A masterpiece may travel to another institution for an exhibition. It may cross an ocean. It may be temporarily displayed in another country. Then it returns home. Each movement requires careful planning. The artwork is not simply placed in a box and transported. Its condition is checked. Its environment is controlled. Its packaging is designed specifically for its needs. Security measures are arranged. Insurance and legal documentation may be required. Because when a museum moves a masterpiece, it is moving something that may be impossible to replace. So when you walk through a museum and see the painting hanging quietly on the wall, remember that you are seeing only one moment in its life. Before that moment, there may have been hundreds of others. An artist's studio, a private home, a royal collection, a dealer's gallery, an auction room, a wartime hiding place, a dusty attic, a museum storage room, and perhaps years when nobody knew where the painting was at all. The frame may look still, but the history inside it is anything but still. Every ownership record is a clue. Every old photograph is evidence. Every missing year can become a mystery. And every museum accession number represents a promise. A promise that this artwork will be cared for, that its history will be recorded, and that future generations will have the opportunity to stand before it and ask their own questions. Because a masterpiece does not begin its museum life when it reaches the gallery wall. Its journey begins much earlier. And sometimes, the story of where a painting has been can be just as fascinating as the story of who painted it. Gallery Experience: Hidden Stories Behind Art. Episode 10. The Secret Journey of a Painting from the Artist's Studio to a Museum.